Right now, I would like to welcome to WLRN, Coco Peru. How are you, Coco?
I'm wonderful. Just finished my cafe latte here in Los Angeles, and I'm ready to speak to you.
Well, we are so pleased that you're coming to Miami because this will be your Miami premiere, I believe, right?
This will be my debut, really, in South Florida. I've been going to South Florida for years, but I've never actually performed there.
Well, let's get into the background of Coco Peru and where maybe some of our listeners have seen you on television or in the movies.
Well, I've actually I started my career in New York City in the cabaret world, doing cabaret shows, and from there I moved into doing a little bit of TV and movies. I've been on Will and Grace, Arrested Development. In the movies, my film that sort of put me on the map as far as the gay world was a film called Trick, and then more recently I did a movie called Girls Will Be Girls. That both those films were in Sundance, and that was amazing. That I do drag, but that I've been in 2 movies and I've gotten to go to Sundance twice.
Well, and that Girls Will Be Girls is quite a funny movie, to say the least. I mean, it really... And then it was an online series briefly, wasn't it?
Yes, very briefly. During the writer's strike, the writer, Richard Day, and he's also the director, he just thought, well, why don't we just do something for fun while none of us are working? Although I was working and Varla worked quite a bit because we do our own shows. He wasn't, so we put together a couple of movies.
So, and that series is still available online, girlswillbegirlsonline.com, I think it is.
Yes.
So check that out. Oh, yes, there's the website. You can check that out and relive all the fun of the story of Coco and her friends online.
And hopefully it'll be back up soon, actually, because I think Richard forgot to pay the money this week to keep it up. I think the website actually shut down yesterday. It was funny that you're bringing that up. Let's send all your listeners to this website. That doesn't exist anymore.
Well, I may do a little editing here.
Exactly.
And of course, you mentioned Will and Grace. I believe during the opening sequence, that was a famous opening for Will and Grace that you were involved in.
Yeah, it was really a lot of fun. Of course, I had hoped it would lead to more episodes,
yes.
Which it never did. But I'm grateful for my minute and a half of Will and Grace, the experience. And we all sat in a big circle. It was sort of like the Brady Bunch. We all had our own little boxes, and we were all on a phone call to each other with call waiting, and I go from looking like a boy to dressing up in drag in a matter of a minute and a half, which would never, ever happen in real life. I said to them, I said, you are aware that there are drag queens across America that will watch this and go, there's no way that could ever happen.
And then I think that you were on hold, and then the last line was something like, Ma, can you get the phone?
Yeah, exactly. Mother, can you get the door? I'm on hold.
Oh, yes, and that's a classic line. Well, so you went from New York, the cabaret scene, you've done some television, you've done some movies. Now tell us about this live act that you're bringing to Miami.
The show that I'll be doing in Miami is the sort of greatest hits of Coco. It's a combination of 4 of my different shows, and I find that it works well when I'm just popping into a city. And I'm also performing with the Gay Men's Chorus. I think they're going to be on stage before me, and then I will do my show, and they'll join me for a couple of tunes. So I'm very excited about the whole event. The fact that the Gay Men's Chorus is going to be a part of it. My family all live in Palm Beach, so I have about 10 family members, including my mother, who's featured quite prominently. I talk about her a lot in the show, so she'll be there. Probably mortified.
I was going to say, how would that make you feel with Mom right there? I'm sure she's seen your show before.
She has seen my show before, and I have to say, my father has passed away, but both of my parents, right from the get-go, when I decided to do this, they were a bit shocked that I made this choice because I had trained to be an actor. I went to college, and then I just decided to do this, and both of my parents were at my first show ever. They were sitting right there down in front, And I always say it's wonderful that not only did they accept me, they celebrated me. It wasn't just one of those, oh, well, we accept what you do because we love you. It was like they really got into it. So I'm very fortunate for that.
Yeah, that is to have that support. And so after seeing it, what was they were supportive and so proud, I'm sure, even to this.
Very proud. In my first show, I talk about how whenever there was a review of my shows in one of the major papers in New York City, my father would go up every morning my father went up to get like a roll and a cup of coffee at the local little market in the Bronx where I grew up. Mm-hmm. And he would pass the newspaper up to all the guys that did the same thing, to go get their cup of coffee. And he'd tell them to open up to that page, and, there would be this picture of me in drag. And my father would be like, that's my son, very proudly.
What an image you're giving us. Well, you've won a slew of awards from GLAAD and other sources. How does that make you feel to be sort of, if I can even call you an icon in the community, a leader of the gay community and doing such wonderful things? How does that make you feel?
My instinct is always self-deprecate and be like, oh, come on, please, low-end celebrity. But I am very proud and moved. I love when I feel that I'm being appreciated. I mean, who wouldn't love that? I just did a show in Phoenix, and after the show, there were like 100 people online waiting to get an autograph, and they were all, saying really beautiful things to me. And, or sometimes they'll even say to me, you're probably tired of hearing this, but I never get tired of hearing those wonderful things that people have to say after my show. And, when I first started doing drag, actually before I started doing it, I made the decision that I wanted to be, I had this vision of what I wanted to do. And I really believed that storytelling opens up people's minds. People can relate to a good story. And I wanted to be on stage dressed as a woman, but not pretend to be a woman. I wanted to acknowledge, being a man and tell these autobiographical stories and have people forget that they were watching a man in a dress and just relate to the story. And I thought if people could, especially I would say straight people and gay people, I thought would be empowered by the stories and feel like maybe not so alone, as I feel when I hear people laughing or when I can tell people are moved by a story. It makes me feel less alone in the world. But I thought if straight people were coming to see the show and they could relate to everything I was saying, they'd walk out of there going, I can't believe I just related to a gay man who's wearing a dress. And then perhaps, I don't know, they'd leave there and be a little bit less judgmental of our community.
That's beautiful, yeah. Well, so you label yourself as a storyteller with monologues and comedy. Is that what you're bringing to Miami? It's the storytelling, it's comedy. It seems like with the Gay Men's Chorus, there's going to be music as well. So
correct.
It's really it sounds like it's going to be a wonderful evening.
I think it'll be great. I've been doing this particular show all around the country, and I'm really excited to bring it to Miami with this extra little perk of having the Gay Men's Chorus there, and in a beautiful theater.
Yes, the Colony Theater on Lincoln Road, Miami Beach, is a gorgeous theater.
Yeah, I was there once before, and I just love Miami. I mean, my family, I've been going to Florida every year since I was a kid. So,
well, up there in Palm Beach County, what kept you from making your debut down here?
It's hard to find a venue that's right. I've been invited to perform at bars, but my show doesn't always go over so well in a bar because people are drinking and talking, and my show requires attention, and people have to listen. Well, so unless a bar can set up their space to look somewhat like a theater, it doesn't really work. And,
right. I'm glad you brought that up because this is not, when we say drag queen, that term is sort of thrown around a little bit pretty freely these days. This is you are a performer, a professional. It's bringing a wonderful grab bag of an act to a stage with stories, with comedy, with music. It's not, as we said, a bar where you just go and see somebody doing some lip syncing or something like that, which is fine. That's good for
I
whoever's
celebrate that too, absolutely.
Yeah, sure.
But you're right, and for years people have always said to me, don't call yourself a drag queen because you're doing yourself a real disservice calling yourself a drag queen. And sort of the term drag queen always has this derogatory feeling to it. But for me, it was a drag queen that first inspired me to do what I do. So for me, that term was always, I was embracing something that I celebrated.
And it has evolved.
And it has evolved. And I do think when I was in New York doing drag in the early 90s when I started, there were so many interesting drag acts that had nothing to do with what we think of the typical, bar drag queen gets up and lip syncs. There were all sorts of drag happening, and I was really excited to be a part of that wave that was happening in the early 90s in New York City.
Tell me a little bit about your Logo network comedy specials called Wisecrack.
Yeah, that was a great experience. I mean, the great thing about that is it reached a lot more people than I could ever go around doing shows around the country. In fact, I got an email from an 11-year-old who had watched the show with his parents, then reached out and sent an email to my website saying, "Thank you for everything you do for the GLBT community." And of course, I wanted to write back, how the hell do you even know what a GLBT community is? But I was really moved that, there's no way I would have ever been anywhere where an 11-year-old would see me perform,
Right, it had to be on...
So it had to be in that kind of, on TV, where in the privacy of their own home, where he obviously has really terrific parents, he got to experience that. So in that way, that was a wonderful experience. But then again, I get these residual checks, and not one of them has ever been more than the cost of a stamp. I called Logo. I said, why don't you just save them all, and when it equals more than the cost of the stamp, then send me a check.
Well, you're certainly doing a lot for the community, I guess. That story with the 11-year-old certainly brings it all home, especially in this day and age as we still, as you and I are speaking, there's still controversy going on with civil rights and that sort of thing. And
absolutely.
It's good to fight the good fight in a way.
Yeah, and I'm glad people are as outraged as I'm always, outraged. I feel like when you do drag, you're living life on the edge, so you're experiencing you know that there's prejudices out there, but you're experiencing them a little bit more than other people who might just sort of blend into society on an everyday, basis. And the fact that Prop 8 here and then your proposition in Florida, that those were passed, people are really outraged, and I'm glad that I'm proud of my community that they're as outrageous as they are.
Definitely, it is. It's good to see people doing something. For so long I kept saying, "Why isn't anybody marching in the streets?" And yet here we are, marching, which is good. There's been a term like the Will and Grace effect on people because of that show. That it sort of has. Oh well, people are used to seeing a gay storyline on TV, so that sort of lessened the way that people have prejudice against the gay community, but yet I don't see that today, especially with the propositions that
I think young people are definitely, because I remember watching a program on television, a documentary, and they interviewed young people about gay people, and these young teenagers were saying, it's no big deal to us because we grew up watching Will and Grace.
Right.
So I think for young people, those shows definitely had an effect on them. But then again, there's something about the word marriage, and just people can't seem to... You have to really get in there and say, listen, I have insurance from my partner, but he has to pay taxes on that insurance.
Right.
Those sort of things hit home more to people. Or when I travel to Florida, if something happens to my partner, they're not going to allow me into the emergency room. Is that fair? And most people who have any kind of heart realize, oh, no, that's not fair. And, then they sort of... But if you just say you want to get married, they can't wrap their mind around that. They have to be educated, basically. And maybe part of our mission has to be to put out stuff that educates people more. And Will and Grace did a wonderful job, but then again, it you didn't really ever see any of those characters falling madly in love and having any kind of relationship.
Right.
So.
Right. Very true.
Probably that was a choice because it maybe people would have lost interest. That's a little too icky for people.
A little too real, perhaps.
Yeah.
Well, Coco Peru, it has been wonderful speaking with you, and we are all looking forward to your appearance here in Miami at the Colony Theater, Lincoln Road, Miami Beach. The performance is Sunday, January the 11th, 7 p.m., and the Gay Men's Chorus is making a special appearance. And I know, Coco, you have a wonderful website, misscoco.com, which has all the information about this performance. And I love your website because it welcomes you with that. What do you say when you click onto your website?
Oh, it's a surprised, oh, hello.
It's wonderful. Just go there for that, and you'll enjoy it. But and there's also video clips. You have some of your act on there. I have
some of my acts, little things here and there, yeah. But I'm excited to be in Miami. I encourage, of course, the gay community to come out, but I even encourage some of your straight listeners to come out and experience it. And they won't be the only straight person there. I get a lot of straight people in my audience, and I'd like to have a mix of people.
And that's
they can help spread the word of Coco.
Well, that's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the program, is because this really is a fun time for everybody.
Yeah. And I'm thrilled. I've only been on another NPR station years ago in Phoenix, and right before I went on, I peeked out into the audience, and the whole front row was elderly people, and I'm talking like one of them had a walker, a couple of them had canes. And I said to the guy that invited me to their performance, I said, they're at the wrong show. They mean to be at the Holocaust show next door. There was a bigger theater next door. And so he went out to these elderly people and said, you're at the wrong show. You're supposed to be next door at the Holocaust show. And they said, no, we're here to see Coco. We heard her talk on NPR this morning, and we wanted to see it. And they were amazing. And at one point, I was singing the song. I looked down at them, and they were all crying. It was a song about losing I was basically talking about my childhood and sort of the damage, and then it led into this song. They were all crying, and at the end, they were the first ones to stand up and give me a standing ovation. So NPR, I listen to it every morning, and I'm thrilled that you asked me to be on your show.
Well, it's been a pleasure, and I do thank you again, and we'll look forward to seeing you in Miami.
All right. Thank you so much. I'll see you soon, and please say hello when you come to see the show.